Welcome to Wrestling with Heart, a podcast looking at pro wrestlers giving back to their community. Join me, Stanley Carr, as I interview wrestling's hottest names who use their platforms as entertainers to raise awareness and do community service. Hello and welcome to another edition of Wrestling with Heart. This is the show where we talk with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling personalities about their lives in and outside of the ring, as well as doing acts of charity work, community service, volunteering, and spreading positivity. We're all about the positivity here on the show, and with me today, I've got a very special guest. He is a wrestler, actor, worked for all different companies, served in the military. Pleased to welcome the one and only Victor Andrews. Victor, welcome to Wrestling with Heart.
What's going on, man? I appreciate you having me on as a guest.
Yes, my pleasure. So you're from Brooklyn, New York. That is a big city in New York. Tell me about your upbringing and childhood.
Yeah, man. I grew up in a project called Brownsville in Brooklyn, New York. It's pretty standard project area. You know, you mind your business so that way you don't get in any trouble that you don't need to be in. I grew up with my mom and my three siblings. I'm the oldest of four on my mom's side, and I'm like the middle child on my father's side. I didn't grow up with my dad. I didn't meet him until later on in life when I became an adult, which is fine with me because I became the man that I am today. But yeah, man. I mean, we grew up in Brooklyn. We left in '97 and came down to North Carolina, and then I finished like school and high school here in North Carolina. After that, I left when I graduated high school. I went to the military for 2 years. When I got out the military, came back and it started my adult life and going from there, man. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely seems like you've had a lot of experiences going around the country, seeing different parts of the world as well. Was professional wrestling something you enjoyed watching growing up? How did you get into it?
Yeah, I watched it when I was a kid growing up with my mom. And that was like a big thing for us. Like we always would come together and watch professional wrestling, watch WWE all the time. At the time, it was WWF, and we would sit back and watch our favorites. Like my favorite of all time was The Undertaker. Then you had like Shawn Michaels and Eddie Guerrero, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, and all those guys. And my mom used to get this guy to come to the house, and he would zap the cable box so that way we can get the pay-per-views for free. That was like way back in the day of just being able to, bootleg the the cables that we watch the pay-per-views. And we used to go like to the grocery store and we grab like chips and drinks and stuff and sit around in the living room and watch the pay-per-view and just, cheer for our favorites and boo for the guys that we didn't like. And just be able to do it now as an adult, man, it's like surreal to me because, I watched it as a kid when I came adult, when I had opportunities, I ran with it. Traveled all over the U.S., traveled all over the world now, coming up in the next couple of weeks, just from professional wrestling, like seeing places I've never even heard of and never think that I would ever see without professional wrestling.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely opens the door to new opportunities and a new world to see, these larger than life athletes, take matters into their own hands, essentially. I mean, The Undertaker, goodness gracious, one of the biggest, stars in professional wrestling, tall dude, 300 pounds, that's got this crazy, this spooky, supernatural gimmick. I mean, where else
Hmm.
can you see something like that? I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually met him a couple of years ago. I was working WrestleMania in New Jersey, and I was sitting in catering, and I was there as talent. And he actually came into the catering area, and I was watching him go through the line, like get his food, and I was just sitting there like, oh man, I hope he sits next to me. And he ended up eventually sitting next to me, and we sat there, we talked for a little bit, and then guys like Kane and Big Show came, and they actually sat next to me as well. And after a while, I was like, you know what, let me move on and let these guys enjoy their meal. So it was amazing. It was fun. Great guys and very humble and very approachable and very encouraging and giving really good advice. So I really enjoyed being able to meet somebody that I idolized as a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes full circle. Before we get into your journey into professional wrestling, let's talk about your time in the military because that definitely, talk about, something that's pretty intense. I mean, that had to have prepared you for that lifestyle.
Yeah. I didn't stay in the military very long. I was only there for 2 years. Before I went to basic training, I did reserves and I worked with the United States Army Reserves and did some light mill mechanics and things like that. And before I went to basic training, I switched over to active duty. And I went and did basic training in Fort Knox, Kentucky. And then I went and did my AIT in Fort Lee, Virginia. And then I got medically released from Fort Lee.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, when you're doing that, when you're in that line of work, that environment, I mean, it's really rough out there because you got to deal with all kinds of people, and you're defending yourself, defending the United States. That's a big responsibility.
Yeah, man. I mean, I was in during 9/11, and I was actually in basic training when 9/11 happened. And I was in Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I remember like vividly sitting. I had a medical issue, and I was sitting in the hospital in the emergency room, and I happened to just look up and see everything going on the TV, and I thought it was a movie. I thought somebody was watching a movie, and the guy that was sitting next to me, he told me, he said, "Nah, man, this is really happening in New York," and it opened my eyes to how real things could actually get, in terms of how open our country is and um what it really means to actually be in the military. And I thought we was gonna get mobilized right out of basic training, but luckily we didn't have to. We already had troops that was ready to go and do whatever they need to do. But just to be in the basic training as a young kid and just getting into the army and realizing something like that happening and not knowing which direction we was gonna go after that was just it was mind boggling.
It's just devastating. It's a tragic event. I mean, lots of people, unfortunately lost their lives. It's just a scary time. Did you know anybody that unfortunately was affected by the September 11th attacks?
Uh Not personally. Thank God, none of my family, anybody, was directly affected. My wrestling trainer, her mom had some issues, and I think she was like near there, with nothing to where it was as bad as what it really was. No, and no one passed anything. Well, God, thank God that nobody died, but just knowing people that were still there and hearing their stories about what happened and what they experienced was enough for me.
Yeah, definitely an event for sure that we'll never forget for the rest of our lives. Now, back on lighter notes, let's talk about how you got involved with professional wrestling. Was there a particular moment where you just said, I got to do this, I got to train, I got to find out who do I get in touch with?
So I actually started off as a boxer. So I did the Golden Gloves tournament in Brooklyn, New York, and I was actually doing my acting and modeling at the same time. The one of the managers at the agency that I worked for, she introduced me to the guy that helped me get my boxing competition. And when I had my first fight, I lost by 1 point in the first round of the tournament. And the the manager, she came to me, she started talking to me. She was like, "Look, I see that you're training really hard. You're trying to get another fight, and no one's really giving you an opportunity to box. Would you like to give wrestling a try?" So I was like, "Absolutely. I would love to do that." And so she took me to New Jersey, and we would go out there just about every 2 or 3 days and go train. And from there, man, I just once I got in that ring and started moving around and getting like the wrestling bug, I haven't stopped and haven't turned back since. And I've been doing it for 15 years now.
Unbelievable. So awesome. Yeah, I mean, once you're in that ring, it's like a home, especially for an athlete, you're used to it. Your body's used to the, physicality and doing drills and the mobility aspects. So when you got started, Tell me about what your experience is like as far as training goes. Can you tell me about what your story was for the training process?
Absolutely, man. So, coming out from boxing and doing a little bit of MMA, my mentality was I'm never going to land on my back. So to go into professional wrestling and being told, "Hey, take a bump," and being told, "Just throw your body on the mat," I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would I just want to just throw myself around and land on my back? We're taught to never land on our back in boxing and MMA. But after a while, I just had to tell my mind that my body can handle it, and just like I call it ultra instinct, allowing your body to do something naturally and not forcing it to do it. So after a while, it just became second nature to me, and I started moving around. And I remember we used to have like this big crash pad on the outside of the ring. And again, The Undertaker is my favorite wrestler. So when we get done with training, I asked my trainer, I said, "Hey, can I do that big dive over the top rope like The Undertaker does?" And she was like, "Do you know how to?" I was like, "You just run and jump, right?" And pretty simple. She was like, "Yeah, pretty much. But if you're gonna do it, you better commit to it, because if you land on that rope or you fall, nobody's there to catch you. So if you don't do it correctly and you go falling, you can get hurt." So I said, "All right, I'm gonna do it anyway." And the first time I did it, I ran, I jumped over the top rope, and I landed very nice and safely on the mat. And then after that, I just got excited. Like, I went, "Oh, let me do it again." And I went like a big kid. And I went and I jumped over the ropes again. And I kept doing it. And she's like, "All right, it's time to go." So my first experience was amazing, man. I enjoyed every little bit of it.
You start training, you get your experience, you're now set to debut. What can you tell me about your first few matches?
So my first match wasn't even like wasn't supposed to happen. I was happened to be at a show and someone didn't show up. So I just kind of got thrown into a match. I didn't have wrestling gear or nothing. And so I got to the back, and my trainer, she was with me, and she was like, "Look, you guys need another guy. He knows the basics. He can go in there and just listen and work with you guys." So they was like, "All right, well, you got wrestling gear?" I said, "I don't have anything yet." And one of the guys that was actually wrestling against, his name was Chris Banks. And he actually gave me a pair of his wrestling gear to wear in the ring, which was amazing. He's a really good guy, and we're really good friends now. And so I got in there and I worked the first match, and I was horrible. My very first match, I was horrible, man. I mean, I was all over the place, but they were so professional and so good at what they did. They kept me composed, and they helped me, and they trained me along as in the match. And then after that, I ended up coming back to North Carolina, and I just kind of like made my way through, just talking to some people, and I got back into boxing for a little bit, and I did some MMA, and then I met someone who does movies. His name was Sean Dudley. He's my best friend. He passed a couple years ago, and he introduced me to a friend of his who knew a wrestling promoter by the name of Count Grog here in Raleigh, North Carolina, for Gallus Pro Wrestling. And he's like, "Yo, I can introduce you to him, and you just have to do the rest." So he introduced us, and I spoke to him. And again, I still didn't have any wrestling gear, so I just went to the store and kind of threw some stuff together. And he gave me my first opportunity in North Carolina. And from there, I met a couple of guys and started making connections and moving on to like a bunch of different other promotions, and just kept growing and growing and growing. And now, man, it's 15 years in, I've wrestled all over the U.S. just because of it.
Now, you've worked for a variety of different companies, most notably the WWE. You did a lot of extra work for them in recent years. Tell me about those experiences.
Man, it is the most amazing experience ever. I mean, growing up watching something and turn around getting an opportunity to work for him. And I got that opportunity through Steve Carino. Steve Carino is a really good friend of my trainer now, who is C.W. Anderson. When I moved to North Carolina and I started making some moves around, some guys introduced me to CW, and CW started training me and just tightening my craft and helping me to get better in the ring. And CW and Steve Carino are best friends. So CW introduced me to Steve. Steve brought me into one of his companies called PWF. And then from there, Steve started going to Ring of Honor. He started working there. And then he got me opportunity to work there. So I wrestled for them. I've had 3 matches with them. And then when he left Ring of Honor, went to WWE NXT, he brought me along there. And I had my first match in NXT. It was me and Lars Sullivan against Heavy Machinery in a tag match. And then from there, I got an opportunity on WWE Raw as one of the Lashley sisters. I was Jessica Lashley, the whole segment between Bobby Lashley and Sami Zayn. Mm-hmm. And then I had an opportunity to be one of the carriers for Baron Corbin when he was King Corbin. And then my most recent one for WWE was wrestling against Veer Mahaan.
Yeah, I mean, those are some pretty good moments there. Some pretty good experiences, being on TV, because when you're in a packed arena full of people, they're screaming, they're hollering at their favorite stars, they're booing, they're cheering. I mean, there's just nothing like it in the world. I mean, it had to have been just such an amazing feeling going to such a huge, huge company and being able to be seen by a worldwide audience.
Absolutely, man. And then meeting people like Triple H and actually getting the opportunity to shake his hand and speak to him, and Shawn Michaels and Matt Bloom, who's formerly known as Tenzai, and Cody Rhodes and John Cena, and having like a little dark match and looking down the aisle and seeing John Cena standing down the aisle and watching you work in the ring, and just having those opportunities, man, like it's just amazing. Working with WWE has always been an amazing experience. Just being able to learn different things, being able to talk to people who's willing to allow you to come and speak to them, and just take the time out and say, yeah, man, if you do this or you do that or change this up, or I think you would look good doing this, or, you're doing everything right, just keep going. It's just, it's a surreal memory and moment in my life to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully you get more opportunities, more chances. Tell me, who have been some of your favorite opponents to work with over the course of your career?
Oh man, every last one of them. I can't say one over the other because everyone has brought something different to the table and has pushed me in a different way. Whether it's just my cardio or just my way of thinking in the ring, or the way I fight, the way I wrestle, the gear that I wear, the charisma that I add to it, the attitude, the personality, the whole facade and everything. Just everybody brought something to the table to make me want to step my game up. So I can't choose one person over the other.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Well, what's your goal? Like, where do you see yourself in wrestling in the next 5 years? If I had to put like a time frame on it, time frame, timetable on it. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years with wrestling? What's your goal?
In the next 5 years, and I'm actually working on this goal right now, is I will be owning my own wrestling company and performance center that would be the equivalent of WWE in terms of a performance training center. Not so much as a company, because WWE is $1 billion company. I don't think anybody's going to be able to match up with them. But just to have a training facility that's going to be able to bring in talent and train guys and get them ready for the next step and the next level, and just making opportunities for everyone. Opportunities that I may have not given, or opportunities that I have been given. Just being able to be that next step for whoever want to take their careers to a higher level.
Yeah, I mean, I like to see more schools, that help people along the way to get them going, so that when they do get called up to the big time, it means something,
Mm-hmm.
because I think the more places that can help young talent grow their careers, it can help them break into a WWE or an AEW or wherever. So I think that's awesome that you're doing that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, let's switch gears now. Let's talk about some of the stuff that you've done outside of wrestling. I know you've been involved with various charity organizations or have done charity work outside of the business. What things have you done to help out in your community?
Yeah, so I was involved in two charity dance competitions, and like something like dancing like the stars. One was Dancing with Our Stars, and the other one was uh dancing um it was Dancing with Our Stars and Dancing with the Stars. And just those two organizations is like a all inclusion type of project where they're helping kids with special needs, autism, um, and disabilities and things like that. And the other one was kind of just raising the money for different organizations that are helping children with their education. So just
Mm.
doing things like that, man. I've worked with community centers, um, just being a guidance counselor. I've helped different young kids in terms of like modeling and building up their resume in the modeling world, and just being out here and just being a good role model and a good figure for a lot of young individuals out there in the community.
Yeah, I mean, the entertainment industry, especially modeling, I know, it's hard out there, to really to make it, and so you need people to really give you that guidance that can tell you, what to do, what how to go about, building your resume, building your career. And so that's great, It's very nice that you're able to you're doing that, you're paying it forward because, it's not easy.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, it's pretty cool like you were involved with dance competitions. Were you a dancer as well?
I've done some dancing years ago as a young kid. I've done it in a parade in North Carolina. Me and my sister and two of our friends, we put together a little dance group. I did a little couple things in New York, nothing really big, just in the neighborhood. But it was always something that I just kept, in my back pocket just in case I want to go out there and just, be it. And it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to be able to dance whenever you go out in the nightlife, or you're with your spouse and you just want to, just move around in the house and have
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, fine. It's a great activity, good exercise. Was there a particular, charity or moment that you helped someone that just was just heartwarming? Do you have like an experience you could share?
Yeah, the All Inclusion Project is ran by Clay Aiken and his mom, and just being able to assist in helping these special needs kids to feel included in different projects. They do things like send them on different trips, give them like big activities and stuff like that, and just allowing them to feel like they're a part of the community and not just someone who has some type of disability or some type of special needs. Like they actually feel like they're they're normal, in which they are. They're normal, but to be able to see that they can be included in what everyone else is doing and not feel like they're being left out. That was one of the biggest things and heartwarming to me.
Yeah. Why do you feel passionate about helping out in your community?
Because growing up in Brooklyn in the projects, man, is was an eye opener for me whenever I moved to North Carolina, seeing different things. Um, our narrative was that whenever you grew up, only way you could actually take care of your family is if you were a drug dealer or a sanitation worker. And to be able to come from something like that and be who I am today, to have done the things that I've done, I wanted to be able to say no one is a product of their environment. You can overcome anything. You can control your narrative. You can go out there and be whatever it is you want to be. And I want to be able to open those doors and give those opportunities and shine that light to neighborhood kids who may not know that there is possibilities of being able to do such things such as I've done.
Yeah. I mean, you just got to believe in yourself. You just have to really, find the confidence that you can do whatever you want to do, and the sky's the limit.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I'm always saying that there is no limits. The only limit that you have is the limit that you put on yourself.
Yeah, it's very well said. Well, Victor, I just want to say thank you for coming on to Wrestling with Heart. It means a lot to me and to the listeners and viewers that are watching this on YouTube. Where can people find more about you on social media?
Yeah, man. You guys can just Google me. Roosevelt Conyers is my real name. You can Google me, and you'll find a bunch of different things. You can follow me on Instagram at Roosevelt Pro Fighter, and you can follow me on TikTok at official_Mr. Everything. And look me up on YouTube. Just look up Victor Andrews Wrestling, and you'll see all my wrestling matches, and you can see all the different things that I got going on.
All right. Well, thanks again, Victor, and you're more than welcome to come back.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me.
All right. You're welcome. Take care.
All right.
This is Wrestling with Heart. I hope you found this podcast to be informative and entertaining. If you did, please hit the subscribe button and look out for the next edition.